This is the My Inner Therapist podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole Seals. This show is dedicated to the rediscovery of our innate ability to transform our lives. Think of it as an opportunity to look at your life from a safe distance, from the seat of being your own therapist. In this role, you'll learn to become an observer of your life. It's an effective way to separate our thinking self from our doing self. This way, we can take inventory of our thoughts, beliefs, and stories without judgment, but with awe, humility, and love. It's so easy to get distracted and derailed from our goals, so let this be your safe place for self-discovery. If you're tired of cliched advice and disappointing personal development programs, then I encourage you to take this journey with me. And like any good road trip, you'll need to bring a few things. Come with an open mind, a sense of humor, and the courage to see your truth. I'll be rummaging through my stuff right along with you because we're all a work in progress. The goal is to laugh and learn our way to becoming our own inner therapist. To upgrade our vocabulary, rewrite our stories and beliefs so that they help us to reach our potential. Join in the discussion by sharing your comments and thoughts, and be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. To learn more, visit myinnertherapist.com for access to courses, self-talk audio programs, articles, and videos. You can also follow me on Instagram at myinnertherapist or to subscribe to my YouTube channel. You'll find all these links in the show's description section. All right, enough with the intro. Let the session begin. Hi all, thanks for listening in. I actually received a couple of emails in regards to a very specific episode that had aired on my old podcast, Nourishing Bits, and it was in regards to finding your tribe of women. And when I took Nourishing Bits podcast down, that episode went along with it. So I'm actually bringing this back by popular demand, or at least the demand of two people. I'm going to go ahead and share this episode with you today. It is one of my favorites because I think it is an incredibly important topic, which is creating a support network for ourselves and really having this resource that we can go to when we need not only emotional support, but when we also need someone to help us in regards to some critical thinking. Maybe sometimes we can't often see the things that are, that need to be addressed with ourselves. Sometimes it's helpful because people are mirrors to us to have people around us that we trust, that we can go to and ask for their advice and ask for their insight. So this episode is really about that and the power of having this special group of women in your lives. So I hope you enjoy the show. And for those of you listeners who have an episode from my previous podcast that I was doing that you'd like to hear again, please always reach out to me, send me an email, and I will get that posted for you. In the meantime, enjoy today's episode. I'm going to give you a little bit of a disclaimer that it is geared towards women. So for all you male listeners out there, stay with me. Don't abandon ship. There's some really insightful, helpful information in here as well for men. So, and also too, if you have women in your life, this is helpful information that could really strengthen your relationship with women and give you a little deeper insight into our lives and how we engage with one another. And that's what really this topic is about today. I'm calling it Finding Your Tribe of Women because I think that for emotional wellness, it is vitally important that we all find our tribe. And when I say find your tribe, I mean really creating and having a network of supportive friends and family members who are there for you, who love you unconditionally, and who share your values. It's very crucial to have, even if it's a small group, to have people that you can turn to who really are not just about yesing you and agreeing with everything that you have to say, but are also there to help you grow and evolve. And sometimes that means that we're not always going to think the same way and we're going to have differences. But it's loving the person despite those differences that is what is really important. So I want to talk to you a little bit about how you can go about finding your tribe and why it's so important. And this actually I decided to do this topic because I am experiencing it in my own personal life, and it often shows up in my professional work with clients. I have a client who's going through a really, really challenging time in her life where she's having to make an enormous decision that's very weighted. And oftentimes we want advice and we want to be able to turn to people and ask them what they think, people who really know us well. And one of the things that really helped her through is to be able to have good friends that she could turn to during this time who could help her do an honest reflection about what was in her best interest. And her and I talked about how important it was to open yourself up to asking for that type of help, because a lot of times, especially if you're a strong woman, you want to make these decisions on your own, and sometimes we feel maybe we're embarrassed or we have some shame about our situation, so we don't want to turn to people. But that is exactly the time that we do need to reach out to our tribe and get their input and their support. So it was so wonderful to watch her go through that process and to have that in place and have that there for her. And for me, in my own personal life, I experienced it, something very, very similar in regards to a long-term relationship that I have with someone so close to me, considered them to be family. And really out of the blue, well, actually, I'm not going to say out of the blue, because I had been pulling back from that relationship for some time because I'm a firm believer in really limiting the negativity in my life. And I don't want to become an enabler for that behavior. So for me, I will typically let people do their journey, whether they're headed in a direction of growth or whether they're stagnating. I let them do them. And I am there for emotional support and for advice. And that's really the conclusion I'd kind of come to with this particular relationship. And it was what I needed, and it was what was healthy for me. And I can imagine that on the receiving end of it, maybe it was challenging and difficult because we can tend to feel a sense of abandonment or loss when someone pulls away. And unfortunately, rather than being able to have a discussion about that and talk about that, this particular person decided to lash out and was very angry and really said things that are kind of relationship deal breakers, and brought into question the respect that I had for this individual and also the trust. And it's incredibly unfortunate. And I found myself really looking at the situation, trying to understand how it got to this point. And what I had to realize, and what I'm often talking about in these sessions and these workshops that I have with clients, is that there are a number of different triggers that can bring on this type of a shift in a relationship. And it's helpful to take a step back and to look at it with a little bit of distance so that you can gain a healthy perspective on what is exactly happening. And that's what I found myself doing in this particular situation. I am a firm believer that as a coach, as a counselor, anytime I'm working in a therapeutic environment, the things that I am encouraging others to do for their growth and evolution, I must practice in my own life. That is something that for me is, it's important for me to be a role model and also someone who has done the journey themselves. I feel like I'm much more capable of advising and counseling if I have gone through that struggle or that particular challenge as well. And so I learned a tremendous amount from this experience, and I feel like it's definitely has helped me to be better equipped at helping others go through something similar. So if you are finding this relatable, if you've been through this yourself, or you you know someone close to you that you ended up being a part of their tribe and you were supportive for them when they were going through it, then you understand how it does have to be dealt with. You have to bring some type of you have to make some type of decision as to how you are going to move forward. Your response should be thoughtful and it should be conducive to what you want out of your life. So let's talk a little bit about just what are some of the triggers that can shift relationships. And when it comes to, especially female relationships, I want to specifically talk about female relationships because there are, I think, some very specific attributes to female relationships that really can come into play. And one of the first is just different belief systems. And you hear me talk about belief systems all the time. If you have a relationship or friendship with another female who has different belief systems than you have choices to make. You can decide that, you know what, I love this person unconditionally and regardless of these different ideas and values that we have, I'm going to accept them for who they are. Or you can choose to find fault in them because they think differently than you. And that really is a choice. We make that choice in every relationship that we engage in. So you could have different ideas about parenting, you can have different ideas about religion, you can have different ideas about dating relationships. And I'm sure as you're listening to this, you're thinking of how that has manifested in your own relationships at certain times. I hear so often about women arguing and fighting, especially when it's online. I think that's so disturbing to me when these discussions, let's call them discussions. It's not what I really want to say, but let's call them discussions, are happening in this public forum, and they're so petty because I think it says so much more about a person who chooses to air their dirty laundry and their grievances and things that are really just personal issues and making them public. I think that says more about the person than the actual difference of opinion that two people are having. And, you'll see this when parents, when moms will attack other moms based on, breastfeeding in public or not vaccinating their kids or critiquing and making judgments about how other people choose to live their lives, and especially when it has no effect on them whatsoever. It could be an absolute stranger that someone's making a judgment call on. And so often we will disagree with someone when our beliefs aren't in alignment, which is normal, healthy to have a disagreement. You do you, I'm going to do me. The problem is that a lot of people take it a step further and want to somehow make a judgment about the person who thinks differently than them. And we see this often with religion. We see this often with just lifestyle choices that people make. And that's where it's so easy to then really have your relationship experience this type of shift where you go from being so close and really loving and enjoying the company of this person to them violating what you think is a rule of life when it really is just your belief. When you feel like everybody should be living this way when it really is just your belief. And we project that onto other people, and when they don't agree with us and they don't live their life according to our plans, then people have a tendency to get upset and get their feelings hurt. So difference in beliefs and values is a really strong trigger for a shift in our female relationships. Also insecurities, and that shouldn't come as a surprise to any of you listening. Insecurities are typically at the root of a lot of miscommunication, arguments, and then when I had mentioned before in describing them as petty, it usually is because the argument itself is really just a mask for this underlying issue, this bigger issue, which is really an insecurity that a person is feeling. They could be questioning themselves. They could be questioning their self-worth. They could be plagued by doubts about their abilities. They could be feeling like they're losing control, or that they're really overwhelmed with their life. And rather than being open and willing to discuss it and talk about it, or maybe even being able to talk about it, maybe they don't necessarily know how to even go about sharing this, and maybe there's some shame and guilt in sharing it. So they don't talk about it, and instead it becomes so easy to mask or deflect from what's going on with me and make it about you. That's a really classic, that's a really classic deflection technique, is to, okay, well, rather than fix my own stuff, I'm just going to pay attention to the things that you're doing that I find annoying or wrong, or just being critical of you is so much easier than being critical of myself. So insecurities are a really, really common trigger for why there can be a shift in female relationships. And resentments, which are also, resentments tend to come when we hold on to things that we're uncomfortable sharing or talking about. We'll harbor resentments because we struggle to admit that our feelings have been hurt, or that we experienced some jealousy, or that we were feeling abandoned, that we felt some kind of loss from the relationship. And so we'll be resentful. And resentments usually lie at the surface. So there are people who, you can feel it in their behavior, you can feel it in their body language, it resonates all over their face. Resentments are a little bit harder to hide, and they sneak out in conversation and really kind of snarky. I've never used that word snarky before, but really kind of snarky comments, jabs wherever they can, almost kind of relishing in anything bad that may happen to you, because that somehow makes them feel like payback, like you're getting payback for having hurt them. So, resentments can show up, and when they're not expressed and not talked about, they can end up shifting a relationship. And then also the other thing that we must talk about when we're talking about female relationships, and why there can be these rifts and these shifts, to a place where, we're no longer talking, or we're fighting, in a public forum, or we're just saying really hurtful, mean things to one another, is that we're often under the influence. And I'm not just talking about drugs and alcohol. That could be the case for some people. But I'm talking about just being under the influence of someone else, of a message that we've been given and that we've adopted, under a belief that we've adopted. It could be under the influence of our partner, of our spouse. It could be under the influence of your boyfriend. It could be under the influence of another friend, another girlfriend. We are constantly adopting other people's opinions and beliefs, and it could shift how we engage with others that we care about. We also have to keep it real that we live in this male-dominated world, and past generations have really kind of grown up and been fed this propaganda that we're lesser, that we're the lesser sex, and that we were raised to buy into this idea that men are superior, that they know better, that we should be dependent on them. And so then it becomes quite easy to fall under the influence of those ideas, especially when it's everywhere we go. It's at work. We're working harder, making less. We're not getting the promotions. We're having men get promoted over us who, we've been there 3 years, they've been there 6 months. It could be happening in your home. It could be happening in your family. It's happening in the media. We see it all the time. So that can also come into play, because it's really easy to succumb to those ideas and have that influence our behavior and how we treat one another. So we have to take all of these different triggers into account when we think about our female relationships and the women that we choose to have in our lives and how we engage with one another. It's it's really it should really be a thoughtful approach that we take to understanding what's going on with those women that are important to us and those women in our lives. And it shouldn't be done at the sacrifice of your own emotional health and your needs, but it is good practice to really make an effort to try to sustain and nourish those relationships that we value. So the main point is that there's two takeaways, right? The first is that more often than not, it's not you. And a really great way, this is something that I practice in my own life, and I'm so grateful that I've got people that are willing to play this role in my life for me. And it's a good portion. I've got some really great male friends, and I've got some great female friends. I got my male and my female tribe. And I do what I call third-party check-ins. So if I've had a situation, whether it's, in the management of a team or an engagement with a certain team member in my work, if it's with, regarding a client, if it's something that's come up, a challenge that's come up with my family, or even if it's been another friendship where I've had something happen and I'm trying to wrap my mind around it and get a better understanding of why things went wrong, or maybe how I could have done something differently. So I will then do a third-party check-in where I go to what I like to call my third-party person who has nothing to do with the situation, and I go to them for just some unbiased advice. And you do have to be okay with being called out on your behavior. This won't work if you get defensive and you're highly sensitive and you can't take criticism, and you really struggle to take ownership for your behavior. Third-party check-ins are probably not going to work for you. Although you should do them, because it will help you to get stronger and understand that recognizing areas for growth is strength-based. That's how you become a better version of yourself, right? So, you want to talk to them and see if you did contribute to this, be it an altercation or argument or bad decision making. You want to identify the ways in which you contribute to that so that you can take ownership of it and hold yourself accountable. That's a part of the healing process and the repairing it, and that's the core of growing. So I will do these third-party check-ins. I absorb the feedback, and I will tell you that sometimes they are dead on, and it actually feels really good to have someone out of love call you out and say, yeah, you know what, you were in the wrong on this. And I say it feels good because if I trust and respect them, then I know that what they're sharing with me, they're doing because they want me to be a better version of myself as well. So when I do this, it helps me to then really decide how I want to respond and how I'm going to follow up. And if this is a relationship that I value and a person that I really value, then I must come up with a thoughtful response. Because if this is a valued member of my tribe, I want to keep that person a valued member of my tribe. So when you make that assessment, once you've determined, okay, like I've done the third-party check-in, and you talked with your friend or whoever it was, and they're like, no, like you did everything that you should, you handled yourself really well, that was a healthy engagement that you had, and the other person was completely off. If you have come to the conclusion that there was nothing that you would have done differently or you wouldn't have handled it differently, before you engage and before you respond, and remember, it's not about you, right? You need to take a step back and just try to think of what could possibly be going on with your friend. What could possibly be happening in their world? And even if it's not your friend, even if it's your coworker or your boss, taking a step back after you've evaluated what your role was in the situation, I just encourage you to take a step back and consider what might be going on with them. And one of the best ways to be able to do this is to identify their emotion. What kind of emotion did they have when you had your engagement? Were they angry? Were they sad? Because those give you a good idea where they're coming from. Anger, we know, usually comes from a place of feeling out of control, feeling powerless, being hurt. There could be resentment. Whereas sadness, when someone is sad, it usually is that they're just coming from a place of hurt and being lost and feeling some loss. You can also really get a good idea by just reflecting on your past engagements with that person and trying to piece together if there was something that happened that maybe triggered this, or if maybe it's just something that they're not comfortable telling you and talking about. And maybe that's how you'd like to approach them, is to first just do a check-in with them and see if there's something going on in their lives. So one of the things that I am constantly saying to my clients and people that I work with is that people won't learn to sort out their stuff if you keep carrying their emotional baggage for them. So you don't want to be a crutch to someone. You don't want to become the problem solver and the fixer for another person. If you recognize that someone is going through something and you want to be supportive and you want to be a strong, valued member of their tribe, you can be there emotionally for them. But if you take on the weight of that emotion and that resentment, like whatever it is that's going on with them, if you take on that weight and you try to fix it for them, to salvage the relationship, they are not going to get the benefit of having to unpack their own emotional baggage. They are not going to feel everything that they need to feel in sorting through the mess. That is so important. That leaves it creates a memory for us. And that memory is what we tap into when we have moved forward and we're about to have another experience that's very similar to something that we've gone through before. We tap into that memory, right? And we recall what we experienced, and we remember the pain that's attached to it. We remember that process of healing. And that's how we get better at making decisions. So you don't want to rob somebody of that experience. So if you have come to the conclusion that somebody else is going through something, be there for them. Try to be emotionally supportive. Ask them if there's anything that you could do to help them through this. Just walk alongside them. Just be on the journey with them. But you just have to make sure that this is a valued relationship. This is a relationship that you really want to sustain because it does nourish you. And this is a person who's part of your supportive tribe. And if not, and if you see that this person needs to be on their journey and you can't be there with them, it's also okay too to step back. Stepping back and pulling back and letting them sort through their mess can be healthy for both parties involved. And it can also be a very loving act. Everything, like these type of engagements don't have to end in arguments. They don't have to end in exchanging hateful words. They don't have to end in name calling. They don't have to end in us damaging one another just to make ourselves feel better. So I share this with you because as women, we don't always have someone teaching us the skill, right? Because we do come from older generations where they didn't get taught, and then they also have been led to believe that they don't get a voice, they can't really share emotions, and that when we do share emotions, we're hysterical and out of control. There are so many messages that we've bought into about how we're supposed to behave that sometimes we don't know how to. We don't know how to handle conflict, and instead we lash out. And I am suggesting that there is another way, that you could do so in a really loving way. And one of the best ways to go about ensuring that those are the kind of people that you have around you, those people who agree with that, is that you want to find like-minded women. You want to find like-minded female friends who feel the same way, who really value support, but who also understand that we get into relationships for the connection and also for the opportunities to grow. So those differences and the things that we don't agree on are the opportunities for growth. So, be sure to look for other women who share your values and your beliefs. And even if you have some beliefs that you don't agree with, be open-minded. Learn. And even at the end of the day, you still don't agree with them, just accept them. Accept them for who they are. And remind yourself that there's things about them that you value so much that the differences don't matter. You really want to seek women that you can have open, honest communication with. So rather than holding in your hurt feelings and your jealousy or times where you're feeling abandoned, you can go to them and say, hey, this is what I'm feeling. It's kind of getting to me. I don't really know how to handle it, and I don't want to make you feel bad, but I just need you to know that this is kind of why I've been, pulling back in the way that I've been. And if this is a tribe member, that tribe member will respect you for that. So to wrap it up, I'm so committed to helping us women regain, and I'm saying regain our power because we have historically been powerful creatures. And I think we have either forgotten it or we have been taught to forget it, and we suppress it all the time. So I really want to empower you to have a voice and to surround yourself with women who value your voice and all that comes with it. Especially when it comes to knowing the version of yourself that you want to be, the person that you want to be, the life that you'd like to have. Surround yourself with other women who support that, who are living that life, who are already in that place, so that you can have a role model and something to strive for, and you can look and see what it looks and feels like and get a taste of it, so that you are more motivated, and so your energy is much more in alignment to making it happen. There are times that you're going to have those relationships that get negative and get toxic. If you value that person, let them have their journey. Let them experience their growth. Love them through it. If it's no longer healthy, take a step back before you respond and make your decision. Decide whether or not this is a relationship that you want to continue, if you're benefiting from it, or if it really is, you feel like someone's just trying to pull you down to that place where they're at. So that's my female empowerment episode for this month. I am a firm belief that, my close friends and some of my family members know this about me. I really do think that we as women have the ability and the skills to be running companies
and communities and states and government and countries. I think that we bring so many gifts to these roles that are highly, highly underestimated, taken for granted, and taken advantage of. And I would love for us to start recognizing all that we have to offer this world, especially what we have to offer one another. I really want to lift you up because I know that that is good for me too. I don't get anything from bringing another woman down. Nothing good will come from breaking another woman down. And I just want you to remember that and keep that in mind. Lifting somebody up, lifting another woman up is a win-win situation.
All right, that's a wrap for today's show. Remember, your words have the power to repel or attract the life that you want to live. Choose wisely. Until next time, friends.